Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Hashtag Flint with Shane Hodges. And today, my guest is Arthur Woodson, American Patriot, veteran, and community activist. And we're here today to basically start getting some things straight with what's been going on with the Flint water situation, as well as things that we can look forward to in the process. And there's been a lot of talk about people getting involved, and we're trying to, basically, we want to pin down whose fault is this? Who put us in this situation, and where can we go as a community with it? So, coming into that, Art, I was just, thank you so much for all the work you've done. I know I've seen you in all the clips from the beginning till now, protesting and whatnot. What has this whole experience been like for you?
Man, I don't even know how to begin. It's just been a whole bunch of lies, and that's what really got me involved. Being that I'm a veterans advocate, I started out helping a veteran with his claim, which was water contamination down in North Carolina, where at Camp Lejeune, it was TTHMs back in 1959 up until 1985. And man, I mean, it's a booklet. If you Google Camp Lejeune, you'll see throughout the years where they were fighting and showing evidence of TTHM, just like what's going on here. And they would never change it. And when I saw that Flint was trying to go to Flint River water, and I knew that I had read the 2001 Flint River assessment, knowing that GM had dumped a lot of things over there, and then 1999 you had sewer contamination, you had antifreeze contamination, I mean, you name it, it's over in Flint River. And it would be hard to treat all different types of contaminants that was in there. So in 2010, Ken Hardin told Flint that he's the former drain commissioner. He told him that Flint could not financially afford to go build KWA. So they switched off of that. Then they went for that. Then they say that we can use Flint River water to pay for the KWA. That sent red flags right instantly. And didn't nobody really do any research to see if the water was treatable or anything, and they just went to it. And, as soon as they went to it, you had 2 E. coli advisories. Right after that, they did what they call a chlorine burnout for the E. coli. Then you had TTHM. Then after that, you had where they wasn't treating the river water with corrosion control. Now you have the high lead. Me and Bob Stewart was advocating, we was fighting from day one that this wasn't going to work. We even went to some people to try to get a bottle company started because we knew what was getting ready to happen.
Bottled water.
Yeah, we wanted to open up a bottled water company here in Flint. It was sitting idle, and we went to the people and asked them would they help finance it because we knew what was going to happen. And they wouldn't even, assist us in doing so.
Just imagine if they would have. The money that, owning a bottled water company in Flint right now would be like a gold mine in the Old West type of thing.
And would have had a lot of jobs. I mean, it would have brought a lot of jobs in here too. So. And, it was it's just upsetting to know that we were sitting back talking about it and everybody was talking about the water rate when we were trying to tell people about the quality of water. Right. But now, everyone, running around talking about it, not knowing exactly what's going on because they're going by what they've heard now. And a lot of people don't understand the severity what is really going on now.
Yeah, and that's, I wanted to back it up a little bit. TTHM, that's the byproduct of the chlorine they use
For
to kill the fecal matter, like E. coli, and that's all fecal matter and the things that have been dumped in the river. And that's one of the things that concerned me was this water plant had been sitting idle, and I've read stories about the crew sat around, played cards all day, and then all of a sudden they turned on without, we've spoke before, without the proper testing and the rounds of testing before they make it a primary water source. Right. Basically, they didn't follow the steps taken. And we know from the ACLU videos that they pretty much fudged on their report to the DEQ, which accepted that report. And now, we've seen, the aftermath of all these things happening. And there's a sense in the city that I'm feeling myself, everyone is almost elated because 17 months later, we're finally going to be returning back to the Detroit sewage plant, which since the time, it went from the Detroit to, it's got a new Great Lakes something, because Oakland and Macomb County are going to be running the
Great
Detroit
Lakes
Water
Authority, GLWA.
That's Oakland County and Macomb County running the water plant now. So, things have changed, and one of the big questions I've voiced it to you is the water's paid for coming in. That should be our little bit of respite, the pain of knowing we probably poisoned a generation of our children. 13 months of school year had passed. All last year passed before those kids are drinking lead water every day in the city of Flint. So,
well, it's not just lead water. I mean, you have to think about, we just came off TTHM, and then here's the thing that you look at. If they manipulated the lead test, did they manipulate the TTHM test also?
Right.
So you got TTHM, which when it gets hot, is vaporized, and inhaling it was worse than consuming it. So now you got all those months that you did that. Then, they manipulated the test for lead. So now you got all these different things going on at one time. Now, when I spoke to Ms. Henderson and you were sitting there, I said, Ms. Henderson, the state is paying $6 million, and then Mott is paying $4 million. And then when we got in the conference room, Ms. Henderson said that we was going to be paying $1.2 million a month. So I totaled it up. That's $10.8 million for 9 months of water, which $10 million is coming from Mott and the state. So that's water that's already paid for. Right. So then she said, well, it's an average of what we're going to be paying is $8.93 per 1,000 cubic feet. Okay. Well, Flint charges customers $7.92, around that amount, per 100 cubic feet. So that's 10 times what they're going to get from the Flint customers, which they don't even have to pay the state back. So that's all free money that Flint is getting. So I said, listen, why don't you take the burden off the Flint residents, because they have to buy bottled water also, and move it from 100 cubic feet to at least 500 cubic feet, because you don't have to pay the money back. And then you got $16 million sitting in surplus with that also. Right. I said, so, and then you already done budgeted for the workers and everybody else. That's already paid for. So why can't you do that? We don't want to do that. That's the only answer. We don't want to do that. You can't give us a reason why you can't do it, but you just saying, you don't want to give us a reason why you're doing it, but you just say you can't do it. So it's a lot of different things, man, that they hiding and manipulating, and they're not being transparent about. Just like they say that they don't have work permits. I mean, not work permits, but where they put in application for the Flint Water Department to operate. Well, I got both of those in my car. Okay. They saying that they don't have it, but I have it. Right. The things that Representative Phelps is looking for, I got it in the car. So
information.
What's going on here?
Right, exactly. And joining us is an expert on water, Dr. Laura Sullivan from Kettering University, and she's coming in to help us with some of these questions that we all have with the water and the things that are going on with the bills. And thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. It's an honor. Thank you for asking me.
And no problem. And we just, what we're talking about is just the total lack of, because things get misrepresented, they work for us. We pay them to protect us, basically. And I feel like we've been let down. We've been let down big time. Like, the articles are saying the city that, cheapskates that poisoned their kids. And that's, and that's not what we are about here. We know that's not right. And they knew, and those select few that we're talking about that keep, it's like, a guessing, the nutshell game. Keep looking for the nut. And we can't find it. We don't ever get it until it's too late.
We get it, and it's just the fact that they hide it from the masses.
Right.
And
the layer
by
layer
us, like I said, me and Robert Stewart, we were down there every day, speaking to the water company, Howard Croft, the mayor, city council. We were speaking, but didn't nobody want to listen.
Right.
And like I said, we went to them and said it's going to be a serious issue later on. And Robert Stewart had the bottled water company, idle. And all he had to do was just go in there and start producing water. And didn't nobody want to listen to that neither.
Right.
So now and what makes it so bad is the fact that, like I tried to tell him before, Mayor Walling could have made the decision to go to the emergency backup resource, which was Genesee County. Genesee County was our backup resource, and he would not do it. Governor Snyder even said it at his news conference that he was just waiting for Mayor Walling to make the decision. So it was just a political game that they were playing with people's lives, our kids' lives.
Yes.
And I am seriously upset behind all this. I wasn't even thinking about fighting this, doing that, because I was working with veterans. But when I saw that, it was a whole lot of games being played, I needed to step out, and a lot more people needs to step up and step out there and be a voice.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I wanted to have you on, Dr. Sullivan, with the big decision seemed to have come that day when you guys were all meeting in that room and they were looking for concrete reasons to change over and absolutes and,
Right.
grounding facts to come back to Detroit. Could you tell us a little bit about the process that went down? And
Well, it began with going over Dr. Edwards' data from Virginia Tech. And particularly his statements about the corrosivity of the Flint River water as compared to the Detroit water. And I recall I was sort of functioning as a bit of a translator because they didn't have a really good speakerphone. So many of the people in the room couldn't hear. And so when we got to the slide in his presentation where he says that the Flint River water untreated for corrosion is 18 times more corrosive than Detroit water. The administrator, Henderson, asked me to repeat that. I was somewhat surprised, because this is not information that would say, keep doing what we are doing. So I did, and then the following piece of data was that even with anti-corrosion chemicals added, it was still 8 times or 9 times more corrosive. And again, she asked me to repeat that, and so I began to think, okay, so she is eager, she's looking for documentation of what might be wrong with the Flint River water. I think in many people's mind, the word corrosive brings up pictures of acid.
Yeah, that's what I think of
exactly. And so when you say, "Oh, this water is corrosive," you imagine if you pour it on something that would start to disintegrate. and while that's an appropriate word to use because it is water that's tending to pull metal ions out of the pipe, it might be easier to think of it as water that's more it encourages the rust of metal when metal is presented with it, rather than water that has acidity associated with it that attacks. It's just literally water that invites metal ions, and metal ions are prone to want to enter that water because of the high level of chloride. That doesn't necessarily make it less bad to drink, forgetting about the lead. I mean, having a lot of chloride in the water is not really especially good for us to drink either. Right. But it's the chloride, the high level of chloride in the water that draws metal ions out, and that would be iron, which turns orange, or lead, which unfortunately doesn't change the color, right. Or copper, which is blue or green, and so those things come out of the water. So when Henderson said, "Would you repeat that?" I mean, in a way, she was just saying, "I want everybody in the room to note that this Flint River water is pulling more of those metals than the water from Detroit." And so when I sat down after that, there were a number of different comments about health-related aspects to the lead. And what floated to the top of the discussion was, is there a health-related reason not to turn back to the Detroit water as a source of water? And so it wasn't really give me a reason to switch. Right. It was give me a reason why it's in our best interest health-wise not to switch. Which is an awkward sort of thing to get consensus on, right? And so everybody around the room who was a medical representative was, resoundingly saying there is no reason not to switch on a health basis. And she said, let's not consider cost here. Let's only look at the health-related reasons. And so the consensus, while no vote was taken, the consensus was clearly there is no health-related reason to remain using the Flint River.
Now, what I saw the guy from Lane. Right. I don't know his name, but I saw opposition.
There was
from him.
There was. So
him and Dr. Reynolds.
Correct. So one of the engineers from LAN was I don't know if I would say confrontational, but certainly not in a positive kind of way, said to Dr. Reynolds, who had made a comment about that there is absolutely no reason once we have knowledge that there's lead in the water, there's no reason to collect more data. I mean, pretty much you just stop using this water because you're talking about people's lives. And this gentleman from LAN presented some hypothetical, well, how can you be so sure, and what if we do all of this, and look at all the costs involved, and what if it doesn't make a difference, and which Dr. Reynolds took offense to. Yeah, again, because we're not talking about anything right now other than the health of children, and we're not sitting around saying, what if? And many of us, I mean, certainly me in the room, felt a little bit of a happy sort of living vicariously through the words of Dr. Reynolds when Dr. Reynolds said, I'm sorry, maybe you didn't hear what I said, and we're talking about health, and we're talking about lead in the water for children, and this gentleman said, I just asked you a question, and Dr. Reynolds said, well, did I answer your question? And so there was a vocal element, a significant vocal element saying, we just can't do this any longer, and the only opposition in the room really came from the engineers, who, frankly, are part of the reason why I have this problem, because they didn't design the system with that in mind. And I don't know how much experience they have with river water, but
we paying them $141,000 for something that they couldn't really work.
And the gentleman from the EPA said, we could could maybe one day figure out this river water and get it such that it's not leaching the lead, and that we don't have to worry about the TTHMs. We could maybe one day figure out this Flint River water so that we could treat it as it changes, because it changes all the time.
Right.
But we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be waiting around until we figure that out. And so it was good to hear. He was kind of quiet during the meeting, and it was good to hear this gentleman from the EPA clearly say that it is not there. Even the very best employees, and they were very clear to note that the people that work at the treatment facility are doing their very best and are quite qualified. But even the very best, most qualified people working at the treatment facility could not have ESP or whatever it would take to guess how the water's going to change tomorrow so that they can prepare for that. And so it was silly for us to continue to try and do that when we know we have the source of water that's very constant.
My only issue here is when back in March, April, Miss Leanne Walters, she had issues, and her reading was 707 ppbs. And Miguel came down from the EPA, and he tried to tell them. And EPA told them that they would give them 2 experts in lead back in March. They didn't accept them, and they sent Dane Walling, the mayor, an email July the 1st with these same 2 experts. He did not accept them. Then EPA sent me an email to take to City Council, and they left Monica Galloway a voicemail. And I had to take this email over to Ron Fonger on September the 3rd, and they accepted the experts on September the 3rd. And man, these experts came in. So if they would have called the experts in back in March, we would have been off this water back in March. So I hold Dane Walling fully responsible for this lead. Maybe he didn't have anything to do with us switching over to the Flint River water, but he had a lot to do with getting these lead experts in here to tell him what was wrong with this water.
And that's exactly what I see, because you both have been a part of what water you're fighting for, and all the protesting since the TTHM levels were out of control. So all this time in between that people have been either affected or it's affected them somehow. Just think of all the people who bought houses and those past ghost water bills came, and then they lost the houses, and all this money that they collected from renters and all this, and still in the middle of that frame, now that we're piecing together this puzzle, they knew what they kind of were up against, something that they, like you're saying, they don't know what kind of beast it's going to be from this day to the next, so they're gambling. Now, if just for, one point would be, if, let's say, the judge never ruled against the illegal price rates, and the protesters, Leanne, just moved away, where would we be right now?
We would be right where we are. We would be right where we are as far as equality. We would be right where we are. I'm pretty certain, even after 270 citizens collected water samples and Virginia Tech analyzed them and showed high levels of lead. Even then, it was being disputed and people were attempting to blow it off. It really wasn't until physicians got involved, and we were talking about pediatricians looking at the blood in children and showing this increase and showing that it correlates to those zip codes where the lead that the people in Virginia Tech measured was high.
Right.
And I have to say, I'm part of this technical advisory committee, and we continue to be updated, and we continue to see DEQ lead measurements of Flint water that are really low, based on citizens who are continuing to turn in their water at the city, but they're continuing to use, flush out the line before you go to bed at night, and then collect water. They continue to use the small in small hole, small top
the
test bottles, and all along I'm thinking the trust has been broken, right? So some people are still handing in these test bottles to the city because that's a source of free water testing, right? So, but I don't believe that anybody at this point is handing in their water bottle and saying, please tell me why water is okay.
Right.
I don't think that they're saying, please just tell me my water is okay. If that's what they're saying, then all right, go ahead and make sure that your test is such that it says that their water's okay. But when you know that your test is such that it sometimes fails to identify lead or high levels of lead, why at this point in time would you choose not to use a method that will identify where the lead is high? Why would you not?
I guess my question to you is, and this question here is, the infrastructure is totally damaged. Now that it's totally damaged, and we're getting ready to get Detroit water, right? Mm-hmm. And they're gonna have the phosphates, corrosion control, and all that in there. And they might end up having to put more chlorine in the water, or more of this, or it's going to be a whole different structure of treatment now. What happens when we have, something that might come off of Detroit's water now, with this new chemical balance? What happens because we can't treat the water here because it's coming already treated? And Detroit can't.
It still goes through our treatment plant.
It still goes through.
It goes through our treatment plant, and the important one very significant difference is that the water that will be coming will not vary by the hour. It will be a very constant. And if there are changes in the water, they'll be gradual, and it will be possible to correct, if necessary, any changes in the water that occur between where it leaves the plant in Detroit and when it arrives in Flint. And that's what the Flint treatment plant has been doing for many years. It has been in the business of just checking that water and then being available should there be a need to come up as a backup. So first of all, you have water that can be treated because it's consistent. Secondly, you have water that doesn't have the level of chloride in it, and so it's not a solution into which metal ions are prone to move. Right. So yes, there's been a disruption of the biofilm and the protective coating on the inside of the pipes, and that certainly has aggravated the problem of the metal ions leaving and entering this chloride water. Mm-hmm. But when the water, when we dilute and wash out all of that chloride water, and we now have water that has 1/10 as much chloride, a more appropriate level, then we have water that those ions are not interested in leaving the metal and entering, and so it's there. Even without corrosion inhibitors, we have a situation where the water is not as likely to leach any metal ions, iron, any of them. And then, of course, the addition of phosphates and those kinds of things will help rebuild the protective layer on the inside of the pipes, which will make that even safer.
Right.
The problem, though, is that the damage that's been done to those pipes. In other words, those pipes are thinner, and wherever in a metal, wherever there's been any kind of mechanical stress, there's going to be a far higher rate of corrosion than anywhere else. Right. So that creates places along the pipe where the corrosion has happened faster and potentially created the beginning of a crack or a crack. So that problem is going to definitely rear its head once we start seeing freezing pipes. Yes. And we're going to see far more of our infrastructure in need of repair.
So I guess this is the question. You say you're on an advisory committee. Yeah. McLaren back in August made their patients stop showering and stop drinking the water. Now, it was high lead, and correct me if I'm wrong, lead doesn't cause infections or anything like that. So why would McLaren have to set up a disinfected system before the patients can take showers? Was it something like pathogens in the water?
I mean, all right. Now I'm speaking based only on hearsay. Right? I don't know why it is that McLaren stopped allowing patients to bathe, and they continue not to allow patients to bathe.
Right.
I do know that that lead is very unlikely to move through the skin, and so I do not believe that the presence of lead is the reason not to allow them to bathe or shower in it. There must, again, therefore, me just thinking, okay, if it's not that, then what is it? There has to be a reason why they're doing that. If it's either cautionary because there's something that could be there and they don't know, or it's because there's something that is there
Right.
that they're wanting to protect the patients from.
And they won't let us know because I tried to FOIA and try to find out.
And I have not been able to find out either.
That's something that was, there was a press conference this morning they were from Central Michigan,
Right.
and their mission
Detroit
is
Mercy.
in Detroit Mercy.
Yeah.
What their mission is to develop standards of testing for the biofilm pathogens. So,
Right.
like one example they said was, like we were saying, we had our nice old biofilm that had been protecting us, but as that river came in,
Right.
and it starts breaking and is falling apart, so a pathogen that could have been in your neighbor's septic for 30 years broke off and is now being pumped into the house. These little,
Right.
we've seen the uptake in Legionnaires and
Right.
things like that. So these are some of the things they're basically advocating for tougher testing standards, which I think that's because, like we were just talking, they have these levels that they say, okay, we're under 15 and this and that and that, and it's been set and we're good. But we find out that the doctor said 0 levels of lead is acceptable in a
Right.
human body. So I think we're up against these things where they can spin it under control because, look, we proved that it's okay. We passed the test, and that's
Right.
the things
Right.
that we were hearing. But, that so many of the things that they don't know to be testing for with the pathogens, all the little things that can be growing in those pipes and then break loose here and there with all that water, the Flint River water being so corrosive, just knocking all that down. So now as we rebuild the biofilm and we get ready, and the thing that I'm confused about with KWA is now we in Detroit, the water comes and like you said, it's finished off in Flint. Now coming from the KWA, it's going to be from Lake Huron, deep water.
Same source.
But it's going to be raw. It's not going to have
It's not going to be treated. Correct.
So are we, and as the Flint water plant, are we going to be in the same position with them figuring out their curve and
Well, all right.
their testing standards are going to be what, and
they'll need to figure it out. I mean, because and certainly what Detroit is doing would be beneficial
Right.
in knowing how to treat it,
Right.
because the entry to the KWA is less than 10 miles away from the entry to where Detroit collects water. So it's pretty close to the same water. So getting information for Detroit on how they treat the water would be
Right.
useful. The other benefit, again, is that water source isn't going to change all the time.
Right. So it's
How
easier
does
to corner it.
What happens to that water source during its travel from the lake to Flint? I don't know if there's data. I haven't found a case where a municipality collects water and the water travels that far a distance before it's treated. The pipes that it's going to be traveling are brand new pipes, and one would hope that this has
they're
been kept in
solid,
mind.
right.
Well, certainly they're solid, but that also that the fact that the water that's passing through is not treated water could, I don't know, but could have implications to what happens to those pipes as well as what happens to the water during its trip.
I just want to know if they're going to be using their pipe also for fracking, down in Davidson and Lapeer.
Oh, that would not be possible. I mean, that would logistically it would not be possible. I mean, the pipeline that comes from Lake Huron will be unbroken, except at its exit in Sanilac County, where 2/3 of it will go for treatment for Genesee County and belong to Genesee County, and then 1/3 will continue to the Flint Treatment Facility for treatment. I do have a concern regarding, there's a limit in the
have enough, and
right.
we have to blame the Flint River.
When the KWA was first designed and approved, there was a limit to how much water could be drawn, and a decision was made to have 2/3 of that limit of that amount go to Genesee County and 1/3 go to Flint.
Correct.
And at that time, I believe that the 1/3 that was going to go to Flint was sufficient for the residents of Flint, for how many people would need it. Obviously, the population is dropped in Flint, but my understanding is that a positive aspect of the master plan includes a discussion of a revenue generated by selling some of that untreated water to General Motors, because General Motors would love to have untreated lake water for some of its operations, because that would be very unlikely to corrode
But
their
I
material.
just spoke to someone,
Right.
and they said that General Motors would not be coming back to Flint.
But if
And I don't know if there's an answer there. My concern is it was one of the positive aspects of the KWA to Flint,
Correct.
and that was brought into the master plan discussion, was that there could be revenue generated by selling some of the water that we would be getting to other entities before it was treated, and then what's ever left, treating that for the residents, with some moderate concern about whether or not there would be enough left for the residents, and some conjecture that if there wasn't enough, that they could just add Flint River water to compensate.
Now, that's what Daryl Early is going on right now, because they had, City Council had voted on that right there, as far as taking 14 million gallons of KWA water and then taking 2 million gallons of Flint River water. And they voted on that, and Ed Kirks turned it back to, they amended it, but Ed Kirks turned around and put it back at 16 million gallons from KWA, just straight KWA water. So that's what Donnell Early is speaking of when he said that the City Council had voted on taking
and everything
using
in
Flint
place.
River water.
Right. And I would just hope that they've learned enough about Flint River water to not want to do that. But I mean, fact is that they still continue to collect data on residential water, even now as we're talking about making a switch. Mm-hmm. They're still collecting data on residential water, and they're showing they're using the data to demonstrate the low level of lead.
So can I ask you a question? Do you feel comfortable with Flint residents? It's like the fox garden and hen house. Do you feel comfortable after all the manipulations and all the non-transparency and all that? Do you feel comfortable with the citizens of Flint sending in water testing to MDEQ and them giving us the results back? Because Genesee County Jail just told the inmates that they can drink Flint River water and they have no lead in their water. And I want to know how in the world, out of all the places in Flint, they're the only ones that don't have lead in their water.
Yeah. I was involved in 2 meetings at the governor's office this summer. The first meeting where a number of us from this Clean Water Coalition spoke to the chief of staff about our concerns about lead. And the second meeting called by the chief of staff to report to us on the reasons why we don't need to worry about the lead. And it was at that meeting that we saw that the DEQ was making their statements based on not all of the water tests that had been turned in, 68 rather than however many there were. And it was at that meeting that I said, and I still feel, that there is a problem when the entity that's collecting water and the entity that's testing water are both benefiting from good outcomes, right? I can see how it will always be true that the city would benefit from a good outcome. And that's the reason, theoretically, that you would have a Department of Environmental Quality, because the Department of Environmental Quality shouldn't benefit one way or another. It should be their goal, if there's anything dangerous in the water or anywhere, to find it, to identify it, and to treat it. Not to come up with a test that would mask it, not to make sure that there's enough data taken here and there so that the numbers are low. So I can see why it's in the best interest of the city collecting the water to have a good result. There shouldn't be a positive benefit, and there must have been.
I guess what I'm afraid of is how first MDEQ, not City of Flint, but MDEQ went up against Mark Edwards' findings.
Right.
Then right after
And
that,
Hurley
when Hurley came out, it wasn't the City of Flint that went out.
Unfortunate was the comment that they felt that way.
Right.
And they went up against Hurley's finding, which they had data that backed up Hurley's findings.
Right.
My thing is, if they would go up against these experts, and we have to send our test, they just gave $1 million, and we have to send our test to them. Their thing is, we can't make it look bad because we're going to make right.
Exactly.
And
that's my concern.
Right. And I'm
that,
scared to send my stuff to them.
Well,
So
yeah. I mean, I just don't know how much
think,
trust we can have.
And I think that's with you being a part of that committee and all the things going on with the community activation. I think we should be demanding, tougher testing standards and more testing, and have severe penalties in place before we even hook up to KWA. A whole different guidelines, and have some Mark Edwards and all these great minds come together and develop different testing plateaus for us to, if you reach this and this and these timelines, and actually instead of volunteer, you go to the houses, you're in a high lead level, can we test your water, please?
Right.
And I'm sure with a little bit of the DEQ and a little bit of the EPA and maybe some independent university studies here and there, all kinds of collaborative information coming together to make like a gold standard testing.
That's right.
That's something that should be in place, and we can continue to advocate at City Hall and things like that just to make sure something like this don't happen. Because we don't have a clue of the damage that has been done yet.
Right.
We're going to see it 10, 15 years from now when it's just
we'll not stop seeing it for a while.
My thing, like I said, I work with veterans, and Camp Lejeune was contaminated water from 1959 to 1985. And they started testing for TTHMs until 1972. And they come out with the Safe Drinking Water Act until 1974, which President Bush amended in 2002, June the 12th. My question is, why haven't anyone petitioned the ATSDR, where they send in their group of scientists, toxicologists? I mean, they have a whole charade of people that they can send in. Why hasn't anyone, any of the elected officials, which I know you know about the ATSDR registry, why haven't anyone petitioned them? Well,
again, I would say that it falls into the same reason as, why would you not identify? Why would you have a test that doesn't identify the thing that you're supposed to be looking for? Right. I mean, I don't, and they're. If you're into logic, which kind of is how I think, I mean, I can't find a reason. I can't find a reason why the MDEQ would insist, and almost laughing while they did so, insist that everything was fine, and that they weren't detecting lead. And I just don't understand. Once somebody says, well, look, if you don't add these test methods that aren't in the original protocol, if you don't add these test methods, then you're able to detect lead when it's present. Well, well, that's my job. My job is to detect lead if it's present, and therefore, obviously, I want to make sure my test is able to do that. So there's no logical reason not to.
I went down to D.C. last week, and I spoke to the people down in D.C. And like I said, I just couldn't trust the MDEQ, because when I mentioned that they called one of the EPA workers, Miguel, a rogue employee, all of them was like baffled. They was like, "Man, this is a great guy."
Yeah, the DEQ.
And I mean, that's another thing right there.
Right.
So why would I trust MDEQ or Flint on anything right now?
Right. If the entity that's supposed to be making sure that our water is saved is clearly not, and even after being shown why their tests aren't picking it up, still testing that same way, then it seems to me that somebody at a higher level, like AKA the governor, needs to put somebody else in charge of that detection method, at least in the short term, until the people can trust that the specimens that they turn in are actually being tested. You know, the only citizens who are being served right now are the citizens who just want to be told that they don't have to worry. Right. And there are people who want that. There are people who just tell me it's okay. I just want to know it's okay. Right. And they are being served. They are being told it's okay. But the individuals who want to know, is my water okay, or should I be doing something, they aren't being served.
I spoke to Mike Prisby, which is over
for the DEQ,
from the MDEQ, back in it was right after the second E. coli advisory. Matter of fact, it was in June, right after the E. coli. And when I spoke to him, I said, "Hey, listen, Mike, Mr. Prisby, river water is hard to treat because it's turning all the time. And the Flint River has never been raked before. The soil has never been raked, turned, or anything. Doesn't have an undercurrent. It sits stagnated some days, man, for 4 or 5 days."
Right. We all know.
I said, "How are you going to treat this water?" In his own words, he told me, he said, "We learning as we go." Right. And I said, "So you using us as guinea pigs down here?"
That's exactly.
And he said, "Well, I wouldn't call y'all guinea pigs, but we're just learning as we go. It's nothing that we can do because y'all chose to go to the Flint River water."
Yeah, so
that's what he told me.
And that's why I personally think that this is an opportunity now for the city to come together, its leaders, its officials, and to make us the gold standard of water testing and community safe water. We can be example to other communities and ways of creating a positive atmosphere and a response that's all responses are taken serious, instead of discredited and investigated and treated in that way, because in our country, the way things are going, clean water is becoming, less and less, everywhere. It's becoming poison, contaminated. Things are leaching into the groundwater everywhere. And if we in the city of Flint can take this catastrophe and turn it into something positive that other states and other cities can come off of, that's, I think, would be a step forward, because we can point fingers and play the blame game, but the thing we need to do now is to be proactive and try to fix the mess that we've pretty much done to ourselves by either supporting people that don't really support us, or just not paying attention and hoping everything works out. And you guys got anything else you'd like to say before we close out today?
I'm with Miss Laura. Whatever Miss Laura say.
I think you're right. I mean, there could be some positive that comes out of this. There's all kinds of experts now who are paying really close attention. Yeah. The CDC is now getting on board, especially in the health community. There's a lot of attention that this has caused. It took a long time. It took a lot of, complaining and yelling and protesting, and then being fortunate to have experts who came in and started helping us. Yes. So now we have the attention of many experts. And that's the perfect opportunity to do something like you say, Shane, and to create a standard, because we might be one of the first cities to have had this issue, but we certainly aren't the last.
No.
And why not use this as an opportunity to create a safe way to deal with your water, no matter what the source, or to know when you need to change sources, or just to make sure that there's a check and balance, so that nobody in that in that group of people or offices that are meant to keep us safe has a vested interest in not keeping us safe.
Okay.
The only
Thank
thing
you.
I'm going to say right there,
All done, guys.
they assembled